Emily stood frozen at the doorway of the hospital room, her heart pounding as if it might tear itself apart. The fluorescent light above flickered, and every second stretched into eternity as she saw her son lying still. The faint hum of machines was the only sound, each beep a cruel reminder that life hung by a fragile thread. A doctor, his voice low and heavy with sorrow, turned toward her. Dr. Lewis said, "I'm sorry. There's nothing more we can do." Emily felt her knees weaken as if the ground itself betrayed her, and her breath caught in her chest, refusing to come. She whispered, "No, please, not him, take me instead." The room spun, walls closing in, as despair wrapped itself around her body like chains. Tears blurred her vision, and every heartbeat screamed with helpless agony. Her trembling hand reached toward her son, yet she couldn't move closer, trapped between denial and shattering truth. The silence after the doctor's words was deafening, crushing her soul. Her world collapsed, and all she could feel was an endless ache that would never leave. Emily stumbled into the hallway, her cries echoing off the walls. Nurses turned, but none could touch her pain. She pressed her forehead to the cold wall, whispering, "Why him? Why not me?" Her chest tightened as memories of laughter filled her mind. She saw his small hands gripping hers, his innocent smile lighting up the darkest days. Now that light felt ripped away, leaving only shadows. The sterile air suffocated her. Every breath, a battle. She wanted to scream until her throat tore apart, but only broken sobs emerged. In that moment, she felt utterly powerless, as though the universe had abandoned her. Emily said, "I promised I'd protect you, and I failed." Emily's mind flooded with memories of brighter days. She saw herself walking in the park with him, his laughter ringing like music. She remembered ice cream dripping on his shirt as she teased him, "You're messier than me." He giggled and hugged her, leaving sticky sweetness on her clothes. That warmth pierced her heart now like a knife. Emily whispered, "I can't lose you, not after everything I've survived." Her hands shook as she clung to the memory, but the weight of reality crushed her hope. She wanted to believe miracles existed, but the silence of the hospital made faith feel like a cruel illusion. The weight of despair pressed harder, but a faint echo of his voice whispered in her memory. He once said, "Mommy, you're my hero." That innocent voice replayed endlessly, shattering her heart. She clenched her fists, gasping for breath, and whispered back, "I'm no hero. I couldn't save you." Every second without him felt like years, stretching into eternity. She wanted to claw time backward, to undo every cruel twist that led here. Her tears blurred vision, mixing with desperation and self-loathing. Her mind screamed for hope, but the silence kept answering with nothing but emptiness. Emily's body shook violently as she pressed her back against the wall, sliding down until she sat on the floor. She whispered to herself, "Stay strong, he needs you." But her voice broke into silence. She felt hollow, as if life itself drained away. Yet somewhere inside, a faint flicker of resolve pushed against the darkness. She clenched her jaw, wiping tears with trembling hands. She said, "I will not give up on you." Her despair turned into fragile defiance, a vow born from unbearable pain. The hallway stretched endlessly before her, yet she forced herself to stand again, fragile but determined. The morning light crept weakly through Emily's curtains, casting pale stripes across the worn furniture. She sat at the small kitchen table, staring into a chipped mug of untouched coffee. Every movement felt heavy, every breath weighed down by exhaustion. The silence of the apartment was suffocating, broken only by the faint hum of the refrigerator. Emily whispered to herself, "You have to keep going." Her voice cracked, but determination flickered beneath the pain. She thought of her son's laughter, the way his smile could brighten the darkest day. Memories pressed against her heart, demanding she find strength in her love for him. The sacrifices she made, long hours at 2 jobs, sleepless nights, endless worry, all carried one purpose: to give him a life worth living. Tears threatened, but she clenched her jaw. "For him I will not break," she vowed, as if the promise itself could hold her shattered pieces together. Emily walked briskly down the city street, clutching her worn handbag to her side. The morning rush swirled around her, people hurrying past with blank expressions. She felt invisible, just another shadow among the crowd. Yet every step she took carried purpose. She had to reach work on time. Her mind replayed her son's weak smile, his whispered words from the night before. "Don't worry, Mommy." The memory made her throat tighten, but she quickened her pace. The wind tugged at her coat, the chill biting into her bones. Emily whispered, "I can't afford to slow down." Beneath her exhaustion, love was the only fuel that kept her moving forward. Each footstep echoed with desperation, but also with resolve. Inside the crowded diner where she worked mornings, Emily tied her apron tightly around her waist. The smell of frying oil and coffee filled the air. She balanced plates with practiced skill, though her shoulders ached from fatigue. Customers barely looked at her, their eyes on their phones or menus. She forced a smile when taking orders, though inside her heart was breaking. Each tip mattered, every dollar meant medicine and food for her son. As she scribbled on her notepad, Emily reminded herself, "This is for him, always for him." Her voice was steady, though her hands trembled slightly. Behind her smile lived the weight of endless sacrifice, and yet it was the only way she knew to fight for his future. When her shift ended, Emily stepped into the restroom and locked the door. She leaned against the sink, staring into the cracked mirror. Dark circles ringed her eyes, her skin pale and drained. For a moment, she let the mask drop, and the tears came. She whispered, "I'm so tired." Her reflection blurred, streaked by her own sorrow. But she couldn't let her son see her broken. Wiping her cheeks with rough paper towels, she straightened her posture and forced herself to breathe. "He needs me strong," she said, pushing the pain back inside. Her hands gripped the sink until her knuckles turned white, but when she stepped out, her face wore a practiced calm again. That evening, Emily returned home, the weight of the day pressing into her bones. Her son's laughter greeted her as she opened the door, fragile but real. He sat on the couch, pale but smiling, clutching his blanket. Emily's heart softened instantly, her exhaustion fading into quiet strength. She sat beside him, brushing his hair gently from his forehead. He looked up at her with shining eyes and said, "You're the best, Mommy." Her chest ached with both pride and sorrow. She whispered back, "You're my reason for everything." In that small living room, lit by the soft glow of a lamp, Emily found her anchor. No matter how broken she felt, his presence was the light that kept her alive. Emily sat across the desk from the hospital administrator, the weight of paperwork stacked like bricks between them. Her hands trembled as she scanned the bold numbers at the bottom of the page. The bills were crushing, far beyond anything she could pay. She whispered, "This must be a mistake." The administrator, cold and detached, shook his head without compassion. "I'm sorry, Miss Carter, these charges are correct." Her stomach twisted, and she felt her world tilt. She thought of every hour she had worked, every penny scraped together, yet it still wasn't enough. The weight of failure pressed on her chest, making it hard to breathe. Emily said softly, "But he's my son. I'll do anything." The administrator offered no comfort, only silence. In that moment, the hopelessness was unbearable, and Emily felt herself breaking again. Emily walked home under the weight of despair, the evening air sharp against her skin. Streetlights flickered above as the city rushed around her, indifferent to her pain. Her mind screamed with numbers, debts, deadlines. She whispered, "How can I keep him alive if I can't keep us afloat?" Her footsteps echoed on cracked pavement, hollow and frantic. The faces of strangers blurred past, none seeing the storm inside her. She thought of her son's fragile smile, his weak laugh when he tried to hide his pain, and guilt burned through her chest. She felt like the walls of life were closing in, giving her no escape. In the shadows of the street, she finally admitted, "I don't know how much longer I can fight." At her apartment, Emily sat at the kitchen table surrounded by unpaid bills. The clock ticked loudly, each second mocking her helplessness. She buried her face in her hands, tears spilling as her son's cough echoed from the bedroom. Emily lifted her head, whispering, "I can't let him see me like this." She forced herself to shuffle the papers, searching desperately for a way out. Her hands shook as she scribbled notes, but no numbers added up. Every calculation ended in despair. She pressed her palms flat on the table, muttering, "Something has to give." In her heart, fear and anger tangled, pushing her closer to breaking. Yet, she still clung to one thought. She had to protect him, no matter the cost. The phone rang, sharp and jarring in the silence. Emily picked it up with trembling fingers. On the other end was Mark, her estranged brother, his voice smooth but cold. He said, "You always come to me when you're desperate." His words cut deep, reopening old wounds. Emily bit her lip, struggling to stay composed. "I don't have a choice," she admitted, her voice cracking. Mark's silence stretched before he replied, "It'll cost you." Her stomach dropped as the betrayal in his tone confirmed her fears. She thought family meant safety, but instead she heard only manipulation. Emily whispered, "How can you do this to me?" His laughter was bitter, sharp, and final. That night, her faith and trust shattered a little more. Later that night, Emily sat on the edge of her son's bed, watching his fragile chest rise and fall. She brushed his hair gently, her heart aching with love and fear. He stirred, opening his tired eyes to whisper, "Mommy, don't cry." She forced a smile, whispering back, "I'm not crying, baby. I'm right here." Her voice shook, betraying the truth. In the dim light, she made a vow to herself. No matter what betrayal came, no matter what sacrifices she faced, she would fight for him. Even if it cost her everything, she would not let him slip away. The night pressed heavy around her, but Emily's fragile determination flickered like a candle against the darkness. That night, Emily lay in bed, staring at the cracked ceiling, unable to close her eyes. The silence of the apartment pressed against her, but inside her mind, voices screamed. Memories of her past clawed their way back. Her father's harsh words, his cold dismissal when she once begged for help. She whispered to herself, "I'll never be enough." Her chest tightened, her breath shallow, as if those words from years ago still strangled her in the present. Tears slid into her hairline, and she tried to push the memories away. But the guilt and self-loathing latched onto her heart like claws. She pulled the blanket tighter, muttering, "You have to be stronger." Yet her mind fought back, a cruel reminder that strength was never enough to save anyone she loved. The next morning, Emily stood in front of the mirror, her reflection blurred through swollen eyes. She remembered a promise she made years ago, whispering to a younger self, "You'll never cry in front of anyone again." But now she saw a woman unraveling. Her hands gripped the sink, trembling. She whispered, "Why do I always fail?" In her reflection, she didn't see a fighter. She saw every mistake, every loss etched into her face. She splashed water on her cheeks, desperate to wash away the pain, but the reflection stared back mercilessly. For a fleeting second, she saw her father's eyes in her own, sharp and cold, and it made her shudder. Emily muttered, "No, I'm not him," as though rejecting the ghost of his cruelty. Emily walked past a playground on her way to work, children's laughter echoing in the crisp morning air. The sounds stabbed her heart, pulling her back to memories of her son's healthy days. She saw his small body swinging, shouting, "Push me higher, Mommy." Her chest ached as the memory played, vivid and cruel. She whispered, "How did we get here?" Her legs slowed, her eyes fixed on a mother, laughing with her child nearby. Envy pierced her, quickly twisted into guilt. She thought, "I shouldn't resent them, but why us?" Her eyes burned with tears, but she forced herself to keep walking, clutching her handbag tightly. The voices inside whispered again, reminding her of every failure, every choice that led her to this moment. That evening, Emily found an old voicemail on her phone, one she had never deleted. Her late mother's gentle voice filled the silence, saying, "You're stronger than you know, Emily. Don't let anyone take that from you." The words hit her like a blow, unraveling the fragile walls she had built. She sank to the floor, clutching the phone to her chest. "I miss you so much," she whispered. The memory of her mother's warmth, her only source of unconditional love, collided with the present emptiness. The pain was unbearable. Yet in her grief, Emily felt the echo of her mother's strength. Tears soaked her cheeks as she whispered again, "Help me. I don't know if I can do this alone." That night, as her son slept, Emily sat in the darkness by his bed, haunted by the thought of losing him. She whispered, "If I fail you, I fail myself." The room was silent, except for his shallow breathing. Her mind replayed every sacrifice, every fight, but also every doubt that gnawed at her heart. The inner voice, cruel and relentless, whispered, "You are not enough." Emily clenched her fists, shaking her head. "No, I won't let that voice win," she whispered fiercely. Tears ran down her face, but defiance burned faintly behind them. For the first time, she wasn't only fighting the world outside, she was fighting the enemy within. And though fragile, that spark meant she hadn't given up. Emily sat in the hospital waiting room, clutching a folder the doctor had given her. The Betrayal light buzzed above, making her head throb. She opened the folder and froze as her son's test results spilled out like daggers. Her eyes scanned the words, each one cutting deeper. She whispered, "No, this can't be right." Her hands shook violently, the pages rattling like dry leaves. In bold letters, she read the line that shattered her: exposure to toxic substances. Her breath caught, and the walls closed in. She gasped. This wasn't an accident. The memory of trust she had placed in her brother, Mark, returned like venom. The truth slashed through her chest. His business, his negligence, had poisoned her son. She dropped the folder, papers scattering across the floor as she whispered, "You did this." The realization clawed through her like fire. Emily's mind replayed every time Mark had dismissed her concerns, telling her not to worry about the small leaks in his factory. Rage surged, mixing with horror. She whispered, "He knew." The betrayal pressed harder than any weight she had ever carried. Her body trembled, and she pressed her hands to her temples. She wanted to scream until the walls shattered. In that moment, every bond of family crumbled into ash. She saw Mark's smirk, his casual cruelty, and now it wore a darker truth. Emily whispered again, "You've destroyed us." For the first time, anger burned hotter than her fear. And beneath her tears she felt the seeds of defiance stirring. And Emily stormed into her apartment, the folder still in her hand. She slammed it onto the table, scattering bills and past due notices. Her chest heaved as her son looked up from the couch with confused, tired eyes. "Mommy," he whispered, his voice small and weak. She forced a smile, wiping her face quickly, hiding the storm inside. "It's okay, sweetheart," she said, her voice breaking. But inside she screamed, "It's not okay. Nothing will ever be okay." She pressed her forehead to his, whispering, "I will fix this." The truth burned inside her. The betrayal wasn't faceless, it was family. And that made the wound cut even deeper. Emily's vow turned solid in that moment. She would confront him. Later that night, Emily stood by the window, city lights blurring through her tears. She whispered, "I trusted you, Mark." Her mind replayed every family dinner, every false promise he'd made. Her fists clenched at her sides as rage flared hot. She saw not just betrayal but deliberate cruelty hidden in negligence. She thought of her mother's voice telling her to stand strong, and for the first time, Emily knew she couldn't stay silent. She muttered, "You won't take him from me." The shadows in the room seemed to grow as her resolve hardened. She wasn't only a grieving mother now. She was a storm waiting to break. Emily picked up her phone, her hands shaking but her jaw set. She dialed Mark's number, each ring pounding in her chest. When he answered, his voice was casual, cold. "Emily," he said, as though nothing had happened. She swallowed the lump in her throat, whispering, "You poisoned him." The silence on the other end was heavier than any answer. Then Mark said, "You don't understand." Rage cracked through her. "No," she said, voice rising, "I understand perfectly." Tears streamed, but her tone turned sharp, unyielding. "You will face me, Mark, tomorrow." Her finger trembled as she ended the call. For the first time her grief found a weapon, and it was her fury. The next day, Emily stood outside Mark's factory, the air heavy with the smell of chemicals. She tightened her coat around her, trembling. But it wasn't the cold, it was fury. She whispered, "This ends now." Walking through the gates, she saw workers rushing past, avoiding her gaze. Each step forward carried the weight of 1,000 sleepless nights of endless pain. Inside, the walls reeked of neglect, stained by the very poison that had stolen her son's health. Emily's fists clenched, and her heartbeat thundered like war drums. Her voice shook as she said aloud, "You can't hide from this anymore." It was no longer grief alone that guided her. It was justice burning in her chest. Mark emerged from the shadows of his office, his suit immaculate, his expression unreadable. He smirked, saying, "So you finally came." Emily's chest rose and fell with fury. "You did this to him," she spat, tears burning her eyes. Mark shrugged, cold and detached. "Business has risks," he said casually, as if dismissing her agony. Emily stepped closer, voice cracking but fierce. "He's 8 years old, he's my everything, and you poisoned him." The words echoed in the cavernous office, bouncing off metal and glass. Mark's smirk faltered, but he remained silent. Emily's anger shook the ground beneath her feet. "You will not escape this," she vowed. The argument erupted, words like blades cutting between them. Emily shouted, "You cared more about money than your own family." Mark's face hardened, his voice sharp. "I did what I had to do." Emily's hands shook, tears streaming, but she stood her ground. "No," she said, her voice steadying, "you chose greed, and my son paid the price." Mark's facade cracked, rage flaring in his eyes. He stepped closer, towering over her, but Emily didn't flinch. For the first time, she refused to cower. Her voice rose with raw defiance. "You can't break me anymore. I will fight you." The words shook the air, stronger than any fist. Mark slammed his fist onto the desk, papers scattering. "You'll ruin everything," he roared. Emily's eyes burned with fury, her voice slicing through the chaos. "You ruined everything when you hurt him." The air trembled with the force of her words. Mark's face twisted with desperation, the mask of control slipping. Emily stepped forward, her tears shining like fire. "You will face the truth. You will face me." For the first time Mark faltered, his shoulders sagging under the weight of her defiance. Emily's heart pounded, her voice cracking but unrelenting. "I won't let fear control me anymore. I choose him, not your lies." The power of her vow filled the room like thunder. The room fell into silence, only the sound of Emily's breath filling the air. Mark's eyes dropped, his smirk gone, his shoulders slumped. Emily whispered, "I forgive you, but I will never forget." Her tears fell, but her face held strength. Mark turned away, broken by her words, unable to answer. Emily's chest heaved as the fire inside her shifted into something new, release. She whispered again, "For him, I must let go." The confrontation left her hollow yet lighter, as though years of pain had finally cracked open. She turned, walking out of the factory, each step echoing with hard-won strength. It was not victory, but it was liberation. Emily sat by her son's hospital bed once again, her hand wrapped around his small fingers. The monitors beeped softly, their rhythm calmer now, a fragile sign of stability. She whispered, "I kept my promise." Her face was pale with exhaustion, yet her eyes carried strength she hadn't felt before. She thought of the confrontation, of Mark's silence and collapse, and though the pain lingered, she no longer felt powerless. "We'll rebuild," she murmured, brushing his hair gently. Her son stirred, smiling faintly through the haze of his illness. "You're here," he whispered. Emily nodded, holding back tears. "Always," she answered, her voice firm with love. The sterile room no longer felt like a prison, but a place of survival. It wasn't victory, but it was hope. Days passed, and Emily walked slowly through the park with her son, his thin body bundled in a blanket. The air was crisp, and autumn leaves fluttered down like fragile reminders of time. Her son looked up at her, eyes bright with innocence, and said, "It feels good out here." Emily's heart ached but softened. She smiled, whispering, "Yes, it's beautiful." As children played nearby, laughter filled the air, but Emily no longer felt envy. Instead, she felt gratitude for this fleeting moment of peace. Her son coughed softly, leaning against her side, and she held him tighter. Every step was heavy with fear of the future, yet she chose to focus on now. "As long as I have you," she thought, "I have everything." One evening, Emily sat in her living room, photo albums spread across the table. Her son lay on the couch, blanket over him, watching quietly. She traced her fingers over a picture of his first birthday, whispering, "You've always been my light." Her son smiled weakly and said, "And you're my hero." The words pierced her heart with warmth, replacing sorrow with pride. She laughed softly through her tears, replying, "I'm just your mom." Yet, deep down, she knew she had fought battles that nearly broke her. She closed the album gently, looking at him with fierce love. "We'll write new memories," she thought, "ones not defined by pain, but by survival and love." The moment felt fragile, but it was real. Emily visited her mother's grave, the evening sky painted in shades of violet and gold. She knelt in front of the stone, placing a single white flower gently on the ground. Her son stood quietly beside her, his small hand in hers. Emily whispered, "I did what you asked. I found strength." Her tears glistened, but her voice carried certainty. "He's still here because I refused to give up." The wind rustled through the trees, carrying the faintest sense of comfort. Her son leaned against her, saying, "Grandma would be proud." Emily nodded, pressing her lips together to hold back sobs. "Yes," she whispered, "and so am I." For the first time, grief didn't suffocate her. It shared space with pride. That night, Emily tucked her son into bed, her heart overflowing with love. He whispered sleepily, "Thank you for not giving up." She kissed his forehead, whispering back, "For you, I'd do it all again." She sat beside him, watching his eyelids flutter closed, his breathing steady and calm. The room was quiet except for the sound of his dreams. Emily leaned back, exhaustion heavy, but her spirit lighter than it had been in years. Tears slid down her cheeks, not of despair but of release. She whispered to the silent room, "We'll survive." In that moment, she knew the scars would never fade, but they were proof of love's endurance. The story ended, not with victory, but with a mother's unbroken heart.